Okay.
Okay.
Recording has started. Well, hey, thanks, guys. Appreciate the invite. And so Jim B. Sexton out of Orange County, and great to be with you today. And what an interesting topic. And I think this is pretty cool that we're talking about it just at all. It's not, in my experience, it's not a common topic in meetings, and so I think it's great. So for me, I'll just tell you some of my fears around sponsorship, because I think those really held me up for a while in stepping into that type of service. I was much more comfortable with the service of being a secretary or a treasurer or some of the type of meeting level service than I was with being a sponsor, because I just didn't think that I would do it right, or I didn't really know what to do. I mean, there's no book per se that tells you how to be a perfect sponsor, because there frankly is no perfect sponsor. But I had ideas on what a perfect sponsor would look like, and I didn't think I could handle it. And I was also worried about maybe the ability to maintain boundaries and not get overwhelmed. And then I was just selfish. I didn't want to spend the time. I think I had some fear too that all my time would be sucked up in it. And so I just want to say, first off, those were fears, and what I found over time was that actually sponsoring was that they were all based on where I came from and my addiction. They weren't based on reality, and there definitely is no perfect sponsor. And I certainly am nowhere near, as a sponsor, perfect at it. As far as the time goes, this is an odd thing. It's a very spiritual thing for me, but the time I spend in working with others, has been pretty negligent compared to the time I've spent in obsession and compulsion. So when I look at the big picture payback, I get a lot more bang for my buck. And then something one of my sponsors has said to me, and I really like it. I'm in a couple programs, so I apologize for that interruption if that came through. So my sponsor had said that the best service we can do is one-on-one with others, the best service. And his belief is because that's something that the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous really talks about a lot, being of service to other struggling addicts. And I really get that. It's the most challenging service in my experience, maybe not for everybody, but for me it is. And it's also the most rewarding service that I do. And again, that's my experience. Other people may not have that. But my experience has been it's the most challenging and most rewarding. And so I'm just going to talk about it a little bit, and I'll talk about how that's played into or worked into my my partnership relationship with my wife. So for me, sponsorship has been largely about learning, like I said, I'm not to be perfect. I don't have to know everything. I don't have to be wise. I do have to listen. I do have to respect the other person as an equal and make sure that the relationship looks like that. It's not a one up, one down. And that's a big deal for me. And so, how can I be of service? Largely is through listening. Of course, helping people work through the steps. That's a must for me. But really, my requirements for a sponsor are pretty minimal. They need to be willing to work through the steps if they haven't already, and to go to at least one meeting a week. And beyond that, it's their program. Their bottom lines will be their bottom lines. They won't be mine. The way they work their program will be the way they work their program, not the way I work mine. I really have come to believe that my responsibility as a sponsor is to support and encourage the use of all the tools that the program has to offer, but not to tell anybody what tools to use or how to use them. So the steps, to me, are one of the very few things that I pretty much insist if somebody doesn't want to work the steps, I really can't help them. And but I also encourage people to work the traditions and the concepts. It's not a requirement, but I encourage it, as with many things. And when I have sponsees who are willing to do that, it's a huge benefit for me, and I think for them as well. And certainly when I work steps with people, it's a huge benefit for me and hopefully for them as well. I think that's the main thing about being of service in general and being a sponsor specifically, is that it looks like I'm doing it for other people, but I'm actually not. What the Big Book talks about pretty clearly is that we do it because that's what we need to do to stay sober. And for me also, to stay sane. And so I get a lot of challenges through sponsoring. There's a lot of different type of people out there and different personalities, and how can I work with them, support and encourage them, and it's different with every single person, my experience, and some of them are very challenging, I will say that, at least for me, but in learning how to do that and not take things personally and not have it be my way, I have learned how to be in relationship. And that's, of course, obviously, is I think the focus, or at least what I was told the focus of this was supposed to be about, is how do we be in relationship? And so it's been a real learning experience for me of, how do I be in relationship with people where we don't necessarily agree on things. They may choose to be angry at me at certain times for suggestions I've made, or because I'm not as available as they would like me to be, and that's okay. And how can I continue to have a relationship in those situations, because to me it's important that I do. And I can tell you it's emotionally very challenging. It takes a lot of prayer for me to continue to be a sponsor. Again, some people a little harder to work with maybe than others, but they're all, everybody that I work with is a gift of God, as I see it. And therefore, it's my responsibility to take the gift and work with it. And let's see. So let's talk a little bit more. I think I've talked about being supportive and understanding. So let me talk a little bit more about the lack of perfection part. One of my struggles has been that I need to, or I feel like I need to have all the answers, and I just don't a lot of times. And so part of my experience has been that I just need to be gentle and loving. And if I don't have the experience and I don't know, then I just don't know. And I can suggest that they find someone else in the program who might have had a similar experience who could help them with that. Or just flat say, I don't know. That's okay to not have all the answers. That's not my experience has been. What I've learned is that a sponsor just doesn't have to know everything. It doesn't have to have every experience. And, we're all human. And that's all have what we have. And one of the things I had somebody teach me a while back also was that speak from your experience as much as you can. And I really like that because for me to say what I think is, whatever. There's probably some value in that. But when I speak from my actual experience, whether it's my experience in addiction or my experience in recovery, my experience in working the steps of the traditions, I'm speaking from really a place of reality of this is what it's looked like for me and not what I think someone else should do. And so to the best of my ability, I try to do that. So let me step into, as I'm probably using up quite a bit of my time here, what that looks like in relationship. So I think most of us know relationships are not easy, but they can be very rewarding. A sober relationship anyways, at least for me. And so for me, the idea of being there to listen to somebody, to be supportive and encouraging, to be an equal, not up, not down, not above, not below, really works well in all my relationships. I know probably most people are thinking kind, loving relationships is part of relationships, and I think that's critical, certainly. And for me, being a sponsor, doing this type of service has been super helpful in my partnership relationship. But for me, it's also been extraordinarily helpful in my family relationships and in my work relationships and in my, just even with my neighbors. It's been amazing to me how the tools I've used in program and the lessons I've learned as a result of using those tools has affected all aspects of my life, the relationships, all my relationships, everything I do. And, so I'm a huge proponent. Oh, thank you so much, Tamara. So I'm a huge proponent of taking sorry about that, a little quick interruption. Taking what I learn in program, of course, and applying it in all areas of my life. And I didn't think like that in the beginning when I was in program. It was more like, what can I do to have a decent relationship? And by that I meant partner. That was my focus. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I found that's pretty limiting. And because God works through so many people, and my experience is that God works through all my relationships. I get love through all the relationships I'm in, and some of the relationships only last for a few minutes. It may be a work relationship where I see somebody for a few minutes and I never see them again. They're a customer or client, and that is what it is. But my experience has been that if I practice these principles in all my relationships, God works through all of them, and I get the love, and I get the joy that I need. And so sponsorship's been a big part of that because it's really taught me how to be in relationship with one person, specifically at a time, and how to listen, how to be kind and supportive and understanding, and not take offense at every single thing somebody says, and not have to be my way. And those have all been amazing tools for me to use throughout my life. So just back to I still have a couple more minutes, back to the partnership relationship. I've been married for a while as a result, as I see it, first off, a gift of God, but also from working the program. And but it's just not, I don't know, anybody who thinks getting married or finding a relationship in sobriety means that the problems are over is sadly mistaken. At least that hasn't been my experience. The work doesn't stop. And so I have continued to sponsor along with doing other service. Even though I've been in program for a while, I guess since I've been in program for a while, and it's continued to provide dividends for me. And part of it, I don't know, step out of the obvious, we learn something from doing it, is just the spiritual principle of it all, which is through giving in this way, through being of service, God fills me up. And I don't get to necessarily decide what that looks like, but it's part of what I need to do, to be sober, is to be of service, and then God fills me up. And I think part of the way I get filled up is through a partnership relationship. I know that's part of it. I don't really get to decide exactly how much it is, I don't think. But I get challenges through my partnership relationship too, and sponsorship helps me get filled up, so when I come back to it, I'm not coming from a place of lack. So I think most of us feel that going to meetings is where we get to either vent or talk about our issues, and so we can go back to our relationships and be better people, and that's true for me. But what's also true for me is that when I'm of service and I come back to my relationships, I'm a better person. period. And every type of service makes me a better person. But being a sponsor, for some reason, like my sponsor says, delivers the best bang for the buck. And when I am, actively working as a sponsor, I come back to all my relationships, but especially my partnership relationship. I am a better person as a result of it. And I wish I could explain exactly how that works, but I have no clue, so I cannot. I just know that it does. And I think with that, I'm going to just end with this, that I really, really, really encourage everybody to be a sponsor as soon as they can. You just have to be one step ahead of the person you're sponsoring. And I say that because it's such a critical part of our program, and such a huge part of recovery, at least for me, and such a phenomenal way to invite God in. I mean, it's just an amazing way to invite God in. And my experience has been I invite God in through doing that type of work, and the rest of my life gets better. Oh, thank you. So hopefully I haven't been too scattered in that. But I think I'll wrap up with that I really encourage everybody to get into as quickly as they can and just be imperfect. You will make mistakes. I have made a ton. I continue to make them, and it's all okay. Just like in relationship, we all make mistakes. It's okay. Part of being human. Okay, thanks. I'm done.
Thank you so much, Jim. That was just wonderful. I'm such a huge fan of sponsoring and how it's blessed my relationships and my life. Okay, I'm going to turn off the recording.